There's no man that hasn't stood on the other side of feeling good, thinking of the things he could have had. But seeing things the way they are doesn't keep me out of bars, and missing you, I don't feel far from bad.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of In the Studio. I'm Lin Weaver. The program is brought to you by Davis Media Access and broadcast on Davis Community Television, that's Comcast Channel 15 and AT&T Uverse Menu 99. We're also online at dctv.davismedia.org. Well, today we have a very distinguished guest, international best-selling author, writer-thriller extraordinaire, and as you just heard, one of his songs, songwriter, composer, and musician extraordinaire. Welcome, John Lescroart.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
It's very nice that you are on our show today. You have published
Yes.
More than 25.
I think 25, but it could be 26.
25 books.
Yeah.
At least 15 on the New York Times bestsellers list.
Yes.
And your books have been translated into many languages, more languages that we know about.
I don't think I could even tell you what they all were.
And you're world famous.
Well, you know, in a manner of speaking, yes.
Actually, your last book, The Keeper, just came out last May, and I did go to the Avid Reader for your book event, but I must confess that I didn't hear or even listen to anything you were saying, because I kept thinking, who is this man? What fuels his passion, his work, his many talents? Where does all this comes from? Your memories. Who are you?
Who am I?
Who are you?
I'm a mystery wrapped in an enigma. You know, I don't know. I like to think of myself as just a regular guy who found a career later in life. I mean, I always wanted to be a writer. I was always creative in the sense that I wrote songs and learned some music and you know, sang for a living for a while. And I just really always hated day jobs, is what happened. I did every day job in the world. I've been an account executive and an advertising guy and a fundraiser. I've been in a lot of offices.
An eclectic
background.
Yes, and I understand from reading your many bios that you were encouraged in the 7th grade when you wrote an essay.
That's probably
political essay.
I know, that's what started it all. Yeah. My teacher, Mrs. Ballou, in Ralston Intermediate School in Belmont, gave the whole class an essay to write, and I had never been turned loose with a pen before, or paper, And she said, we're going to write an essay on what is democracy. And I was an idealistic young, twerp, and I sat down and wrote about 3 pages just from the bottom of my heart about all of the cliches you can imagine about democracy. But I put them all in a nice order, I suppose, and I wrote it up, and she was very happy with it, and she in fact submitted it to my local newspaper, who printed it. And so I got a whole big page of me with like floral garlands around the whole thing. And, it was heady stuff for a 7th grader. So I decided, this is what I'm going to do when I grow up.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's absolutely wonderful. What is your first memory?
Wow, with all the interviews I've had, I've never had anybody ask me that question.
Well, I'm very interested in
That's
memory.
A very interesting question. My first memory was definitely on Rice Boulevard in Houston, Texas. I was born in Houston.
You were born in Houston. You're a Texan.
I'm a Texan.
Where's your hat?
I left it down at the office.
Boots.
And I left that at the home. So anyway, I remember my mother coming in, and I remember my sister Patricia had a pink bow in her hair. This is really my first memory. And she came into our bedroom and picked me up out of the bassinet or crib or whatever I was in. I was only 1.5 or 2 years old. And we went outside to the street, and I remember looking up and down the street, and across the street was my friend Stevie Mayu, who was also a baby. And that's all I remember. It's just this snippet, but it's clear as a bell. It's like a...
And it's pretty good,
I was
considering
two.
you were
I was
two.
two.
Yes.
Yeah. The next real memory I have was my very first day when we moved to Levittown, Long Island, New York. I was about 4 then. And the first thing that happened, I'd never lived up with a place with a stairway. And I fell down the steps on the first day there, and I hit my chin on every step. Bam, 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 bam. 14 times going down the steps. That's my next memory.
And you survived.
Yeah, it was good, yeah.
So there's something to be said about these two memories. They're diametrically opposite.
One
in
is
a way.
just peaceful and serene and the other is agonizing and painful.
Isn't
It's
this
just
life?
it's just like life, right?
Life.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. So tell us more about you as a person growing up. Did you have a difficult childhood?
No, I had a really wonderful childhood. I mean, I think I put the lie to the whole cliche that you have to have an agonized childhood to become any kind of creative person.
Well, only if you're a French writer.
Oh, well, I'm Lescroart. Aside the Texas part, I do have the French thing going. That's
It's
my
a very
last name.
interesting name, by the way.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Is it a Cajun name?
No, it's a French name.
It's a French name.
Yes.
It's spelled in a strange
It's
way.
it's the weirdest name ever. Here's what happened. Actually, this was written up in Barbara Tuchman's book, A Distant Mirror.
Oh.
There was the French Robin Hood in the 14th century.
Yes.
Was a guy named Croquart.
Yes.
Croquart.
Yes.
His followers were Les Croquart. That's it. They dropped the QU. That's my name.
How interesting.
So it really doesn't mean anything by itself. It's just just a name that nobody can pronounce.
Yes.
And no one really remembers.
Yes.
So it's the worst name in publishing.
Well, it is.
Yes, it is.
It is in a way, but I'm glad you kept it.
I'm not so glad.
No, you're not?
Well,
Are you going to come
let me
up
just
with
tell you a little
pseudonym?
anecdote.
Yes.
Let me tell you an anecdote.
Yes. First
Okay.
of all, repronounce your name.
Lescroart.
Lescroart. More
The
quoi.
opposite of Morquois.
Yeah.
Exactly. So anyway, here I am in Evanston, Illinois, back in 2003. I've already had about 5 bestsellers, and I'm going to a book signing. And I get to this bookstore, and there are 2 library tables full of books piled up, and I'm thinking, this is great. The only problem is all the books are written by John Lescroart. This is a true story. This is a pathetic way to, get to a bookstore after you've just flown 2,000 miles and being put up in a nice hotel, and they drive you there in a limo, and you get there, it's like there's everything but Klieg lights there, and it's for a different guy.
Illinois.
This is in Illinois,
Yeah.
but it's happened in other places, trust me.
So what happened? What did you do?
I'd like to say that I swept the books off the table in a rage and killed the bookstore owner, but instead I just said, maybe you've got a few of my books that I can sign here. I'd be glad to sign Le Carré's, but I'd prefer to sign mine. So
That's a wonderful story.
it's a great story. It's
Yes.
again that great pain associated with great,
Yes.
other
Well,
stuff.
at least your first name is not Jean, because
God,
that would be
that would be
Jean
the end.
all the time. I do have a friend, and his name is John.
Jean?
Jean,
Well.
and Miss Jean is what he gets most of the time.
Yeah, sure.
And he doesn't even look like a woman, so it must be very, very difficult.
It would be hard.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So tell us more about you. I know you're a very happy man. I know
The
that.
question was, how was my childhood? My childhood was really happy. I have 6 brothers and sisters, so I come from a big Catholic family.
Yes.
We grew up in the Bay Area mostly. Texas, then traveling around in the East a little bit, and then by the time I was 9 or 11, I think I got to California.
You
so
sound
I'm a
like
Bay
a
Area guy.
military child.
My father was military.
Oh,
He
that's
was
why
in-
you moved so much. Yes.
Yeah, so he
Yes.
was in the Army when I was born in Houston. My sister was born in San Antonio because he was in the Army. He then became a civilian for a year or 2, and then the Korean War started.
Yes.
So he was an ROTC instructor at Fordham University in New York, and didn't have to go to war, which was good because there were 5 of us by that time.
Yes.
But then all through grade school and high school, I was kind of boringly happy.
Oh, that's nice.
It was great.
That's
And,
nice.
I feel I feel like my childhood was really everything you could want it to be.
Does your childhood come into your books often?
Well, I did have a sister who died.
Oh.
Okay, so that was a
sorry.
tragic part. She had a plastic bag death.
Oh.
And she was 6 months old, and it was horrifying.
Oh.
It was bad.
How old were you?
I was in 3rd grade.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. And that tore the family up, but I mean, it didn't ruin my whole childhood.
I didn't mean to bring up sad memories.
No, sad memories are part. I mean, you ask if it's part of my work. Yes. Dismas Hardy, my main character.
Yes, of course.
He lost a baby at the age of 7 months, so I'd have to say it informs all of these books.
Yes. Yes.
And he goes back and he goes to that child's grave at least twice in the series, you know, just to sit and pray. So, you know, not to make things heavy, but yeah, that of course influenced me greatly.
Yes.
But beyond that, in high school, I was popular and happy, and in college, you know, basically things fell apart, but it was the 60s.
Yes, of course. Where did you go to college?
I went to I went to 4 colleges.
Oh.
In 4 years.
You didn't like any of them?
Well, no, it was money.
Mm-hmm.
It was money, basically. I started at Cal Santa Cruz in 66. I lasted 1 quarter before I ran out of money. Even though I was working at McDonald's as a manager and all of that, I just ran out of money. So then I went to the College of San Mateo for the next semester. Then I went to USF, University of San Francisco, because they had promised me a scholarship. When I got there, it turned out it was a loan, but oh well. I was there and I didn't want to get drafted, so I stayed in.
Yes.
But by that time I was pretty well done with, you know, Catholic schools and doing all that kind of stuff, and I decided I was going to go to Berkeley. Mm-hmm. So I went to Cal Berkeley and spent the last 2 years there.
Was it almost too late for all the revolutionary?
No, it was right in the middle of it.
It was right in the middle.
Every single quarter that I was there, they closed the college. They closed the school because of riots and sit-ins.
Yes.
So it was a very
you?
Well, yeah, it affected me. We had a creative writing class at my apartment because we couldn't be on campus. They closed the campus, and one of the nights we had a guy come in with shotgun pellets.
Oh.
Been shot by the police because there was curfew in Berkeley.
I know.
I mean, it was a very, very bad time.
And
that's the time during which time I got pretty radicalized. Not I don't think as bad as some other Berkeley people, but I got a little bit radical in thinking that, for example, you know, there were other things to think about in life. I mean, it was the whole Vietnam era, and it made me a much more serious person.
Much, and you had reason to.
Well, and I published a poem about Kent State, you know, in the Daily Cal.
Terrible photograph.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
And again, that was one of those big, complete, bordered page, you know, publications. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't say anybody would have taken me seriously as a writer at that time, but I was already writing songs and trying to express myself, you know, personally.
How did you feel about the civil rights movement?
I was essentially, I would say I was a centrist left guy. You know, not right wing, not left wing, but kind of in the middle, and just thought everybody was kind of overreacting and pretty silly. Yeah. But there were a lot of issues that you couldn't overreact to. They were so serious, and those I took a lot more seriously. I mean, like Kent State, who's for the National Guard in that scenario? Nobody.
Nobody.
You know,
nobody.
I mean, they made a mistake.
They
killed people.
overreacted.
Right.
They were
So
afraid.
that's what I reacted to, is the overreaction more than anything else.
Yeah.
And I resented, because I was paying for my own education, I resented the fact that school closed every quarter.
Yes. So it affected you greatly.
Yeah. And if I, by the way, got out of school, I'd get drafted. I mean, it was a whole era.
It was a very, very difficult era for the United States. Of course, we forget that these days, it's the same. But we've been insulated from it.
Desensitized, perhaps, yeah.
Desensitized, but also insulated, because the draft is no longer in vigor, so in force. Let's talk about romantic things.
Okay.
You're very happily married.
Very much so.
And you have 2 beautiful children.
I do.
Where did you meet your wife?
My wife.
Did she like you at first?
Well, we have an interesting story. My wife was my little sister's college roommate at UC Davis. Ah. And, you know, with a big family, that meant there was 11 years of difference between us.
Yes.
And my little sister, Catherine, decided that she was going to set me up with one of her friends.
How nice.
It was great, but it wasn't Lisa. So she had this whole dinner set up. We were going to have this romantic dinner, and she was going to turn the table every 15 minutes as though we were on a, rotating restaurant. Very romantic, really cool. And the person she hired to kind of help her, not hired, but asked to help her with this dinner was Lisa. So here I am talking to this other woman, and there wasn't a lot of chemistry. She was a nice person, but, it was just like nice person.
It wasn't
Meanwhile, Lisa is, coming out and serving a salad and serving me this and that. And I'm going, oh, yeah, okay. And so I said, well, I'd prefer her. But she was not on the menu. So I just let that all go for a minute. And then it didn't go perfectly well because after dinner, my sister wanted me to sing some songs. So I sang some songs and Lisa fell asleep. So I said, well, this is really working well. But then a couple of weeks later, she called me up because Lisa was going to school in Virginia and they wanted to have one last weekend in California together on the beach. So they flew down, they stayed at my house, crashed at my house, go to the beach.
And that was it?
We just stayed up all night talking. I mean, we literally stayed up the entire night, never went to sleep. And by the next day, I was in love with her. And our 30th wedding anniversary is this September 2nd.
Oh, that's fabulous.
Yeah.
Yes. So it was a quick thing. You got married rather quickly.
Well, I think we fell in love rather quickly. I asked her to marry me 10 days later. She said no because she's smarter than I am.
Yes.
And so about a year and a half later, we actually got married.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
And what brought you to Davis?
Well, another little bit of, the Chinese say, may you lead an interesting life.
Yes.
And they mean it as a curse.
I
have had an interesting life.
You have indeed.
Yes.
Just a quick interjection here. Someone a while ago said that you are a captivating storyteller in person as well as on page. So I see that he's right. So carry on.
Well, how do we get to Davis was really pretty interesting because I was my work schedule in Los Angeles. We were living in LA. And my work schedule was grueling. It really was. I mean, You're writing? No, my whole work schedule. I was writing in the morning from 6 to 8, and then I had a full-time day job as a word processor in a big law firm.
Oh my goodness.
And then,
how boring that can be.
Boring beyond belief. And then I also went around the big buildings in downtown LA when I was done and did piecemeal typing work until 11 o'clock at night. So my day was from 6 o'clock in the morning to 11 o'clock at night.
Unsustainable.
And I did it for 6 years. I did it for 6 years.
And
at the end of the 6 years, I just happened to go body surfing because I had to do something to get out. So I went body surfing at Seal Beach, and the next morning I woke up with an earache.
Oh.
And by later in the day, I had a very bad headache and a fever. And by the middle of the night, Lisa packed me up because I was delirious, and she took me to the doctors with a 5-month-old and a 19-month-old in her arms.
Oh.
And the doctor said, you got to get those to somebody who can take care of him because he's going to die in 2 hours.
What was?
I had spinal meningitis. I had
viral.
Advanced.
Viral.
Bacterial, thank God. That's why I'm alive.
Thank God, yes. My sister had viral, but she recovered.
Well, that's good. But
it was terrifying.
Yeah, well, I was in a coma for 11 days.
Oh my God.
Yeah. It was harder on Lisa than it was for me because she was, of course, conscious. I was just sleeping, but I was out for 11 days.
Because of antibiotics, they could give you
90 million units a day. I smelled like a mushroom for, the next year.
John.
But really, that was it. So anyway.
I haven't seen anything like that in your interviews.
Well, we haven't talked about it too much. Other people don't really talk. They talk about books and stuff. This is a personal interview.
That's great.
So anyway, I was, when I came out of the coma, I tried to go back. I did go back to work. But, since I had the bad grace to recover when the prognosis was going to be death, my office manager hired 3 full-time people to do my job.
Grudgingly.
No, she was trying to cover her neck,
Yes.
But I came back, and so the welcome was not overwhelmingly happy. And I said, I think we're about done. I've worked here 6 years. It's time to give my all to writing. So we packed up, basically. Lisa was, this was home to Lisa in college.
Yes.
And my sister and 2 of my brothers had gone to Davis.
Yes.
So we said, let's go to Davis. We picked up, just moved.
And we are the richer for it
Oh, well,
to
great.
have you here.
Well, good.
It's wonderful. I'd like to switch to your, as I mentioned earlier, you're a musician.
Yeah.
You sing beautifully. You have published, no, I mean it, I'm not just throwing you flowers. And your songs, you compose your songs,
Yeah.
and you write your music, of
Yes.
course, and you play the guitar. And you have so far published, I believe, two albums.
Yeah.
Whiskey and Roses.
Country.
Yes,
my Houston background.
Lovely,
Yeah.
lovely. Particularly like the southern songs, which where you allude to your Creole.
Oh,
or
yeah.
the Creole.
Songs of the South.
Yes,
Yeah.
Songs of the South.
Right.
What did I say? Something else.
That's
yes.
all right. Close enough.
And then, of course, Whiskey and Roses.
Yeah.
Very moving song, First Letter Home.
Mm-hmm.
It's fantastic. So,
Thank you.
have you ever tried to choose one for the other, or one pays the bill more than
Until
the
I was
other?
30 years old, I was a full-time musician. That's what I did. I had a band called Johnny Cabo and his Real Good Band, and it was a 5-piece band, and we played in the Bay Area, and we played almost every night. We played 7 days a week for 3 years.
Loved it.
I loved it.
Loved
But at my 30th birthday, I just said, that's it, I'm done. I'm not going to make it as a rock and roll person. You know, that's a kind of a good wake-up call when you turn 30. And I just stopped.
And you had a family, of course.
No,
No, you didn't
have a family.
Sorry.
But the great news was, you know, I felt I could do other things. I started writing right away. I didn't get published right away, but my first book that I wrote actually wound up winning a literary award.
Oh, yes.
So it gave me hope
yes.
that I could continue to do this.
Yes, and
even though
remind me the title of that book. Was it
It was Sunburn.
Sunburn. I've read that book. It's beautiful.
Well, thank you.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's very different.
Yeah.
Very
well,
different.
you know, even though I want to know more about John Lescroart, the man, there's so much of your life is your books that I wanted to ask you. As I said, you've written 25 books, and fantastic. Your characters are beautifully done and beautiful. But I wanted to ask you, if there was a book, I mean, which book you would want to write, not rewrite, write again?
You mean go back and do a book over?
Yes.
You know, I think the process of getting to a finished book is severe enough that almost never happens. I feel like all the books are done.
What if? What if?
What if?
Two wonderful words. What if?
Okay, if I'm going to do a book over, I think the book that I would do over would be The Vig, which was my second book. Second Dismas Hardy.
Could you tell me just quickly?
Well, it's a story. The problem is, if there's a problem, I mean, it's been on, you know, it's still in print after whatever it is, 28 years, so I don't think the problem's that large.
No.
But I didn't know Dismas Hardy, and I had to get to know him in the book. And by the time I finished the book, he was a little bit more the guy I got to know that he became later. But all through the book, he wasn't. And so, to me, he's a little bit of an immature character in the finished book. If I had it to do over again, I would have made him more of a heroic person and given him a little bit more depth.
That's very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Now, do you think your books first?
No.
You just go along?
I'm very much a scene-by-scene guy. You know, I mean, you're supposed to, in theory, write an outline for your books, and you know.
So you're sort of a script writer, but sort of like an extraordinaire script writer.
The whole extraordinaire thing I don't know about, but no, I'm not a script writer. I'm a scene writer. I just go scene by scene. I try to think of interesting things in every scene. That seems like a kind of a dumb approach on some levels, but on the other hand, you can cover a multitude of sins by just writing interesting stuff.
Yes, of course. And it's a step at a time.
It's a step at a time.
So
and then it becomes a little bit holistic, that everything kind of follows from stuff that, you know, you put it in there not knowing exactly why, other than it's kind of cool.
Yes. You know, you probably know that I'm going to bring it up.
Go.
But betrayal.
Yeah. I don't know you're going to bring that one up.
Okay. Unfortunately, it's still extremely timely.
Yes, it is.
Especially now.
Yes, it is.
Unfortunately, because of all the
everything that happened in Iraq.
Yes.
Yeah, hello.
It's starting all over again.
It sure is.
And can you tell me? Well, this is a book about Iraq, and it's also a thriller, of course, and it takes place on the streets of Baghdad, basically. Yes. Why did you write this book? Because you were angered by the situation in Iraq?
You know, yes, partly. That's a good question. But really, I've written a lot of my books because my publishers say, let's expand your readership. You're already doing great. Let's go for the military audience. Or
your publisher or your editor?
Publisher is my editor.
Oh, is your editor.
Right.
Sorry.
But
yes. They're never happy, aren't they?
Well, they want you to always be fresh and new and totally different, except extremely the same.
An impossible task.
Of course.
But you have mastered it.
Well, I wrote about 5 books in a row where my publishers were trying to increase my sales.
Yes.
And they said, why don't you, get a little bit younger? Why don't you write, a sexy young male guy, and he can be the protagonist? So I invented Wyatt Hunt.
Yeah.
And Wyatt Hunt, I wrote The Hunt Club. It did very well. They said, that went pretty well. Why don't you do now maybe a female protagonist?
Yes.
I said, wow, that's a challenge. Okay. Yeah. So I wrote The Suspect. It was the American Authors Association Novel of the Year.
It's fantastic.
Fantastic. It was great. It was Gina Roque, a totally new lead character as a woman. So then I finished that one and I said, yeah, but we haven't really hit the exact sweet spot yet. We're going there, but how about if you write a military thriller? I'm going, gee, Mani, okay, guys, what am I? Push a button and, it comes out like a donut?
It seems to come out like
I don't know. Anyway, that's what happened.
We're just about out of time.
Well, that went fast.
It went very fast, and I wish we had another 2 hours instead of just a half an hour.
Cool.
So thank you so much for being on our show. If say one word about this interview.
Yes.
One word, just one adjective, one word.
Friendly.
Good. I'm glad.
Because you know what? Friendly doesn't always happen in interviews.
No, I know.
And it's wonderful.
Especially European interviews, because you are a celebrity in Europe, I guess.
Sometimes.
Are you a celebrity here?
Of course
not
you
really.
are.
There's different. Well-known.
Small town, well-known celebrity. Yeah.
Well-known is different from being a celebrity, isn't it?
Yes.
But thank you so much, John
My great pleasure.
Lescroart.
Thank you.
Keep writing.
I will.
You're a wonderful author and a wonderful person. And thank you all for watching today. I'm Lin Weaver. You've been watching In the Studio. If you'd like to stream this episode and perhaps take a look at some of the other interesting programs that we offer, just log on to dctv.davismedia.org. From all of us here at Davis Media Access, technical crew, everybody, thank you so much for watching and see you next time.